The falling star. The planet Krios was a lonely place. It was a world of red dust, scrap metal, and endless silence. On the very edge of the galaxy, people only came here to be forgotten. Arthur was one of those people. He was a tall man with tired eyes and hands that were always covered in black engine oil. He didn't have much, just a small workshop and his 5-year-old daughter, Lily. Arthur was a junk mechanic. He could fix anything from a broken toaster to a rusted spaceship engine. To the rest of the galaxy, he was just a primitive human. To Lily, he was a hero who could make toys out of trash. "Is it ready, Daddy?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with excitement. Arthur smiled, wiping his greasy hands on a rag. He handed her a small metal bird. He had built it from old watch parts. With a click, the bird's wings began to flap, and it let out a soft, digital chirp. Lily laughed, hugging the toy. "In this house, nothing stays broken for long," Arthur said softly. But as he spoke, the ground began to tremble. The sky turns red. Outside, the birds stopped chirping. The wind died down. Suddenly, the sky didn't look blue anymore, it turned a deep, bloody red. A massive sound, like the screaming of 1,000 engines, tore through the air. Arthur ran to the window. A giant streak of fire was cutting through the clouds. It wasn't a meteor. It was a ship. But Arthur had never seen a ship like this. It was huge, at least 2 miles long. It wasn't made of gray steel like the mining ships. It was made of white gold and shimmering glass. It looked like a palace that had lost its way among the stars. The ship slammed into the great mountains 5 miles away. The impact sent a shockwave that cracked the windows of Arthur's workshop. "Stay here, Lily. Lock the door. Do not come out until I call you," Arthur said, his voice firm. He grabbed his old tool bag and his heavy iron crowbar. He didn't know why, but he felt a pull toward that crash. Something told him that his quiet life was about to change forever. The Golden Ghost. Arthur jumped into his old, rusty truck and drove toward the mountains. When he arrived, the heat was so intense it peeled the paint off his car. The ship was buried deep in the rock. Up close, it was even more beautiful and terrifying. Even though half of it was on fire, the craftsmanship was perfect. He found a massive circular hatch. There were no handles, no buttons, and no keyholes. It was a biolock, designed to recognize only a specific royal DNA. To any other scavenger in the galaxy, this door was impossible to close or open. But Arthur didn't care about DNA locks. He looked at the hinges. He looked at the way the metal had expanded due to the heat. He found a tiny gap, barely an inch wide. "Expensive tech," Arthur muttered to himself, "but it still obeys the laws of physics." He jammed his heavy iron crowbar into the gap. He placed a rock behind it to create a lever. With a grunt of pure human strength, he leaned his entire weight onto the bar. The unbreakable alien alloy groaned. With a loud crack, the seal broke. Arthur didn't use a computer, he used a simple tool and a basic understanding of pressure. The giant inside. As the door slid open, a cloud of purple mist escaped. Arthur coughed and stepped inside. The interior was full of floating lights and soft carpets. It didn't feel like a machine, it felt like a temple. In the center of the bridge, lying under a fallen crystal pillar, was a woman. But she wasn't human. She was nearly 9 feet tall. Her skin had a soft, blue glow, and her hair looked like spun silver. She was wearing armor made of white diamonds. She was beautiful, but she was hurt. A piece of the ship's hull had pinned her leg down. Arthur didn't hesitate. He used a hydraulic jack from his bag, a simple tool used for changing truck tires, and lifted the multi-ton crystal pillar just enough to pull her out. She was unconscious, her breathing shallow. Arthur looked at her hand. She was wearing a ring that glowed with a light so bright it hurt his eyes. The deadly discovery. Arthur stepped toward the main control panel. Most of the screens were cracked, but one was flickering. It was a holographic map of the galaxy. A red light was blinking over the ship's current location. Suddenly, a cold, robotic voice echoed through the room. It was translating the ship's emergency broadcast into English. Warning, Sector 7 crown jewel lost. Princess Zaria is unaccounted for. Reward for her return, 1 billion credits. Status, kill on sight for all witnesses. Arthur froze. He looked at the giant woman bleeding on the floor, then back at the screen. Below the text, pictures of dark, scary ships appeared. They were Void Hunters, the most brutal mercenaries in the universe. They were already on their way to this planet to clean up the crash site. Arthur realized two things in that moment. This woman wasn't just an alien, she was the most powerful person in the Empire. If anyone found out he had seen her, they wouldn't just kill him. They would destroy his entire planet to keep the secret. Arthur looked at his greasy hands and his old crowbar. He was just a dad from a junk world. But as he heard the distant sound of mercenary ships entering the atmosphere, his grip on his wrench tightened. Well, Arthur whispered, looking at the unconscious princess. Looks like I've got a big job to do. The sky was no longer red, it was turning a bruised purple as night fell. But for Arthur, the clock was ticking. He could hear the low hum of engines in the clouds, the Void Hunters were coming. They weren't looking for survivors, they were looking to clean the evidence. Arthur looked at the 9-foot-tall princess. She was too heavy to carry. Any normal man would have given up, but Arthur was a mechanic. He ran to his rusty truck and pulled out a heavy-duty winch cable. He wrapped it gently around the princess's diamond-clad waist. Using the truck's engine power, he dragged her onto a flatbed trailer made of scrap metal. "Hang on, Your Highness," Arthur whispered. "It's going to be a bumpy ride." The hidden workshop. He drove through the secret paths of the dust canyons, avoiding the main roads. He reached his workshop and backed the truck into the garage. With a loud clunk, he closed the heavy steel doors and locked them with 3 different manual bolts. Lily was waiting, holding her metal bird. Her eyes went wide when she saw the giant woman on the trailer. "Is she a goddess, Daddy?" Lily whispered. "No, Lily. She's just someone who's far from home," Arthur said, already working. He knew the assassins would have thermal scanners. They could see body heat through walls. Arthur did something primitive. He turned on 5 old, broken heaters and placed them in different corners of the yard. Then, he dumped old engine oil onto a hot plate, creating a thick, black smoke that smelled like a factory. To a high-tech scanner, the whole house would look like a mess of heat and noise. The perfect alien sensors wouldn't be able to find a single heartbeat in all that human junk. The awakening. Inside the workshop, the princess groaned. Her blue skin was glowing brighter, a sign that her body was trying to heal. Her eyes snapped open. They weren't like human eyes, they were like shifting galaxies. She tried to sit up, but her leg was bandaged with rough, white cloth. She looked around and panicked. She saw the rusted tools, the oil stains, and the small human child staring at her. "Where am I?" she spoke. Her voice sounded like 2 musical notes playing at once. She spoke the universal language, which Arthur's old radio translated. "What is this, prison? Why is the air so thick with poison?" Arthur walked over, holding a cup of water. "It's not poison. It's engine oil. And you're not in prison. You're in my garage. My name is Arthur. You crashed, and people are looking for you. People who want you dead." Zaria looked at the cup. She scanned it with a tiny device on her wrist. "This water, it is unfiltered. It has minerals. This is what animals drink." Arthur laughed. It was a short, dry laugh. Well, on this planet, we are the animals. Drink it. It'll help. Zaria hesitated, then drank. Her eyes widened. It is cold. How do you keep it cold without a power core? It's called an icebox, princess. No power needed. Just physics, Arthur replied. The hunters land. Suddenly, the house shook. A loud, high-pitched whistle echoed from the sky. Arthur turned off the lights immediately. Don't move, Arthur warned. Don't speak. He climbed a ladder to a small slit in the wall. Outside, a sleek, black ship had landed. It looked like a sharp needle. 3 soldiers stepped out. They wore black armor that absorbed all light. They carried rifles that didn't fire bullets, but plasma bolts that could melt a mountain. They are here, Zaria whispered, her voice trembling. The Void Hunters. They have life-seeker technology. They will find me in seconds. Your icebox cannot hide me from them. Arthur didn't look scared. He looked at his workbench. He grabbed a handful of chaff, tiny strips of aluminum and copper he saved from old wires. Their tech looks for patterns, Arthur said. Humans don't like patterns. The HFY suspense. The soldiers walked toward the workshop. Their leader held a device that projected a red laser. The laser scanned the walls. Beep. 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 The leader stopped. He pointed his gun at the door. On his screen, he saw something strange. Usually, a human house has 1 heat signature. But this house had 6. And the air was so full of metal dust, the chaff Arthur had thrown into the ventilation, that their scanners were blinded by reflections. 1 soldier walked to the window. Arthur was standing right on the other side, holding a heavy pipe wrench. He wasn't moving. He didn't have a shield. He didn't have armor. He just had the quiet of a hunter. The soldier looked through the glass. Because of the thick oil smoke Arthur had created earlier, the soldier could only see his own reflection. Nothing but a junk man's nest, the soldier radioed. The scanners are glitching. The atmosphere here is too dirty. The princess couldn't survive in this filth. The soldiers turned to leave, but then, Lily's metal bird chirped. The sound was small, but in the silence of the night, it sounded like a gunshot. The soldiers froze. They turned back toward the door. Wait, the leader said. Something is alive in there. The cliffhanger. Zaria reached for a weapon that wasn't there. She looked at Arthur, her eyes full of fear. We are dead, she mouthed. Arthur didn't panic. He looked at Lily, then at the door. The soldiers were now charging their plasma rifles. The door began to glow red as they started to melt the lock. Arthur didn't grab a gun. He grabbed a pressure tank of highly flammable welding gas. He looked at the princess and gave a small, confident wink. Stay behind the heavy table, Arthur said. As the door blasted open, Arthur didn't run away. He ran toward the explosion, the shadows of the workshop. The door didn't just open, it disintegrated. The blast sent a wave of heat into the room. For a second, everything was white. Princess Zaria pulled Lily behind a heavy steel workbench, her heart racing. In her world, when a door was blasted, the fight was already over. High-tech armor and plasma rifles always won. But she didn't know Arthur. As the smoke cleared, the 3 Void Hunters stepped inside. Their black armor glowed with a faint purple light, shield generators. They held their rifles up, their helmets scanning the room for life signs. Thermal scan is messy, the leader growled through his helmet. Too much hot oil and steam. Switch to movement sensors. They expected to see a terrified man begging for his life. Instead, they saw a shadow moving fast. The power of junk. Arthur didn't fire a gun. He threw the pressure tank he was holding. It wasn't a bomb, it was a distraction. As the tank hissed and spun across the floor, the soldiers instinctively fired their plasma rifles at it. Boom! The tank exploded into a cloud of thick, white freezing vapor, liquid nitrogen. For a moment, the soldiers were blinded. Their high-tech sensors couldn't see through the sudden, cold fog. Now, Arthur whispered to himself. He pulled a heavy lever on the wall. This wasn't a weapon, it was a magnetic crane used for moving tons of scrap metal. Above the soldiers, a massive, rusted electromagnet hummed to life. Clang! The Void Hunters screamed as their high-tech armor, made of rare metallic alloys, was suddenly yanked toward the ceiling. They weren't flying, they were being sucked up by a giant magnet. Their boots left the floor, and they were stuck against the ceiling like flies on flypaper. Their expensive plasma rifles flew out of their hands and stuck to the magnet. "What is this magic?" the leader yelled, struggling to move his limbs. "Release us, primitive." The human hunter. Arthur stepped out of the shadows. He wasn't wearing armor. He just had his grease-stained shirt and a heavy industrial nail gun, a tool used for fixing ship hulls. "It's not magic," Arthur said, his voice cold and calm. "It's an electromagnet. My grandfather used it to move cars. It works great on fancy armor too." Zarya watched from behind the table, her eyes wide. She had seen the greatest generals in the galaxy lose to these void hunters. Yet, here was a junk mechanic defeating them with a magnet and a cloud of cold air. One of the soldiers managed to reach a small laser dagger on his belt. He prepared to throw it at Arthur. Arthur didn't blink. He aimed the nail gun. Thwack! Thwack! Two heavy steel bolts, 6 inches long, slammed into the wall right next to the soldier's head, pinning his cape to the wood. Arthur wasn't trying to kill them, yet. He was showing them he could. "Listen carefully," Arthur said, "walk." The soldiers looked down. Below them was a dark pit full of rotating metal blades, Arthur's scrap crusher. The Void Hunters, the most feared assassins in the galaxy, were now trembling. A princess's wonder. Zarya stood up slowly. Her tall, 9-foot frame made the workshop feel small. She looked at the stuck soldiers, then at Arthur. You fought them without a shield," she whispered. "You could have died. Why risk your life for a stranger?" Arthur looked at her. "In my world, we have a rule. If someone is hurt and they're at your door, you help them. It's not about who you are, princess. It's about who I am." Zarya felt a strange emotion. In the Empire, people only helped those with power. But Arthur helped her when she was nothing but a broken ship. She realized that humans weren't primitive. They were unpredictable. They didn't rely on computers, they relied on their minds. The new threat. Arthur went to the soldiers and took their communication devices. He plugged one into his old, dusty computer. He wanted to see who sent them. But as the data scrolled across his screen, his face went pale. "Arthur? What is it?" Zarya asked, sensing his fear. "These guys, they weren't sent by your enemies," Arthur said, his voice shaking. "The signal is coming from a royal fleet. Your own people, Zarya. Someone in your family doesn't want you to come home. And they just sent a planet cracker ship to this sector." A planet cracker was a ship designed to destroy an entire world to leave no witnesses. Suddenly, the ground began to vibrate. Not a small shake, but a deep, rhythmic thumping. Outside, the stars started to disappear as a shadow larger than a mountain covered the moon. The cliffhanger. Arthur looked up through the hole in his roof. A massive, black triangular ship was descending from the clouds. It was the Eraser. "They aren't just coming for you anymore," Arthur said, grabbing his tool bag. "They're coming to burn the whole planet to hide their crime." Zarya grabbed Arthur's hand. Her hand was twice the size of his, but she was the one looking for hope. What can we do? We have no ship. My ship is broken. Arthur looked at his rusted truck, then at the half-burned Golden Palace ship in the distance. A crazy idea formed in his head. We don't need a ship that works, Arthur said, a dangerous spark in his eyes. We just need a ship that can fight for 10 minutes. Princess, get in the truck. We're going back to the crash site. But the engine is dead, she cried. Not for long, Arthur growled. I've got some duct tape and a lot of anger. The drive back to the crash site was a nightmare. The sky was screaming. Above them, the Planet Cracker ship was opening its massive underbelly. A red glow began to fill the clouds. The ship was charging its core beam, a weapon designed to turn the planet's surface into molten glass. Arthur pushed his old truck to its limit. Hold on tight, he yelled over the roar of the wind. Princess Zaria sat in the back of the truck, shielding Lily with her giant, glowing arms. She looked up at the sky in horror. It is too late, Arthur. The Planet Cracker is already at 80% power. Even if we reach my ship, the star core is shattered. It takes a factory a month to restart it. Arthur didn't look back. He just gripped the steering wheel harder. In my shop, we don't have a month. We have 10 minutes. And I've never met a machine I couldn't kickstart. Into the burning giant. They reached the crash site. The Golden Palace ship was still smoking. The heat was unbearable, but Arthur didn't hesitate. He grabbed his tool bag, filled with old wrenches, copper wires, and a heavy-duty car battery, and ran toward the heart of the ship, the engine room. Inside, the engine room was a beautiful disaster. Floating crystal pipes were cracked, leaking star fluid, a glowing blue liquid that was hotter than lava. The ship's AI was flickering on the walls, a ghostly voice repeating. Critical failure. Star core shattered. Manual override impossible. Please prepare for total evaporation. Zaria looked at the shattered crystal core. See. The quantum stabilizer is gone. Without it, the energy cannot be controlled. If we try to start it, we will explode before the enemy even hits us. The human solution. Arthur walked up to the core. He didn't look at the holographic warnings. He looked at the plumbing. He saw where the energy was supposed to go and where it was leaking. The problem with you guys, Arthur said, pulling out a roll of heavy-duty copper wire and a jar of thick industrial grease, is that you rely too much on perfect parts. Humans, we've been fixing broken things with good enough parts for thousands of years. He climbed onto the hot reactor. His boots began to melt, but he didn't stop. He used his wrench to bend a broken gold pipe back into place. Arthur, stop! Zaria cried. Then I'll work fast, Arthur grunted. He did something insane. He took the copper wire and began wrapping it around the shattered crystal core. He was creating a cage. Then, he connected the ends of the wire to his old truck battery. What are you doing? Zaria asked, mesmerized. I'm creating a magnetic field to hold the energy in place. It's a jury rig. It's ugly, it's dangerous, and it's definitely not according to the manual. But it'll hold. The final spark. The ship's AI screamed, warning. Primitive hardware detected in the star core. System rejection in 30 seconds. Lily. Throw me the starter fluid from my bag. Arthur shouted. Lily ran forward and threw a small can of highly flammable engine cleaner to her dad. Arthur sprayed it directly into the spark gap of the alien engine. Zaria. I need you to punch that button when I say so. Arthur pointed to a giant glass panel. Don't wait for the computer to say ready. It's never going to be ready. You have to force it. Outside, the red light from the sky hit the ground. The Planet Cracker had fired its first warning beam. The ground shook so hard that the Golden Palace ship began to slide down the mountain. Now. Arthur yelled. Push it. Zaria slammed her giant fist into the glass panel. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then, a sound like 1,000 lions roaring filled the room. The copper wires Arthur had wrapped around the core began to glow white-hot. The truck battery hissed and smoked. But the star fluid began to flow again. The lights in the ship didn't just turn on, they exploded into life. The Golden Palace wasn't a dead bird anymore, it was a hungry predator. The turn of the tide. The ship's AI changed its voice. It was no longer weak. It sounded powerful. Starcore stabilized, via unknown primitive bypass. Engines at 100%. Weapons. Online. Arthur jumped down from the reactor, his hands red and shaking from the heat. He wiped the sweat from his eyes and looked at Zaria. Your ship is fixed, princess. Now, are you going to sit there, or are you going to show them why they shouldn't mess with your new mechanic? Zaria looked at Arthur with a mixture of fear and pure respect. She realized that this tiny human had just done the impossible. He had fixed a godlike machine with a battery and some wire. Arthur, Zaria said, her voice booming with royal power. Get Lily to the bridge. We are not just escaping. We are going to teach my family a lesson about human ingenuity. The cliffhanger. As the Golden Palace ship lifted off the ground, its golden wings cutting through the red smoke, the Planet Cracker ship above them fired its main beam. A massive pillar of red energy descended, aimed directly at them. Shields. Zaria commanded. Shields are at 20%, the AI replied. The copper wire is melting. Arthur grabbed a manual lever near the floor. Forget the shields. Transfer all power to the forward thrusters. We're going to dodge it. Humans don't dodge planet crackers. Zaria yelled. This human does. Arthur pulled the lever. The Golden Palace ship moved with a speed it was never designed for, screaming through the air as the red beam missed them by inches, hitting the mountain behind them and vaporizing it. But as they zoomed into space, they saw it. It wasn't just one ship. An entire royal armada was waiting for them in orbit. Thousands of ships, all pointing their guns at Arthur's fixed ship. Well, Arthur muttered, looking at the screen. I'm gonna need more duct tape. The Golden Palace ship screamed as it broke through the planet's atmosphere. Behind them, the sky was a wall of fire. But ahead of them, the view was even worse. The Royal Armada stood like a wall of cold, black steel. Thousands of ships, each one capable of destroying a city, were locked onto them. This is the end, Zaria whispered. Her blue skin was no longer glowing, it was turning a dull, sad gray. My cousin, Prince Varkas, is in command of that fleet. He has always wanted the throne. He won't stop until we are dust. Arthur was sweating, his hands still red from the hot engine wires. He looked at the radar. He has the numbers, sure. But he's playing by the rules of war. I don't play by those rules. The princess awakens. Suddenly, the ship's main screen flickered to life. A tall, cruel-looking alien with golden scales and 4 arms appeared. It was Prince Varkas. Dear cousin, Varkas laughed, his voice filling the bridge. I see you found a pet human to fix your toy. How pathetic. Surrender now, and I might make your death painless. If you resist, I will burn that tiny planet and everyone on it just to make sure you're gone. Zaria stood tall. Suddenly, her diamond armor began to shift. It grew spikes and began to glow with a blinding white light. Her voice changed, sounding like thunder. Varkas. You have betrayed the blood code. You attacked a royal heir on a neutral world. I am Zaria of the Andromeda Empire, and I will see you stripped of your titles. But Varkas only laughed. Titles don't matter when you're dead. All ships, prepare to fire. Arthur's dirty trick. Zaria, listen to me. Arthur yelled over the alarms. This ship is a palace, right? It doesn't have big cannons. But it has a high-pressure waste disposal system, doesn't it? Zaria looked confused. The trash compactor. Yes, it uses gravity slugs to shoot waste into suns. Why? Arthur grinned, a look of pure human mischief in his eyes. In my world, we call this a slingshot. If we can't shoot them with lasers, we'll shoot them with 20 tons of compressed junk. Arthur ran to the back of the bridge. He opened the ship's internal recycling core. He began dumping everything he could find into the disposal tubes, broken engine parts, heavy crystal shards, even his own heavy iron tools. Lily, help me. Throw those metal crates in there. Arthur shouted. The junk shot. As the Armada's ships charged their lasers, Arthur bypassed the ship's safety locks. The AI screamed, warning. Disposal system not designed for combat. Pressure at 400%. I don't care about the design. Arthur yelled, slamming a manual override lever. Fire the trash. Tum. 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 The Golden Palace ship didn't fire beams of light. It fired massive, 5-ton blocks of compressed scrap metal at 3 times the speed of sound. The enemy ships had energy shields designed to stop lasers. But they weren't prepared for physical debris. The first junk block slammed into a scout ship, crushing its bridge like a tin can. Another block hit a destroyer's engine, causing it to spin out of control and crash into another ship. They are panicking. Zaria shouted, her eyes wide with shock. They don't know how to track unpowered projectiles. The galaxy is watching. Now, Zaria. Use the royal comms. Arthur yelled, his hand on the shaking engine lever. This ship is a palace, it has the strongest broadcasting array in the sector. Send a message to every planet, every citizen. Show them Varkas is attacking his own family. Zaria realized Arthur's plan. He wasn't just fighting a battle, he was starting a revolution. She stepped into the center of the bridge. The Golden Palace ship's royal array hummed. Arthur had hotwired it to bypass Varkas' signal jammers. Suddenly, Zaria's face appeared on every screen in the Armada, and every screen on the planets below. People of the Empire. Zaria's voice was calm and powerful. I am alive. My cousin Varkas is trying to murder me and an innocent world to steal the throne. Look at the scanners. Look at who is firing. I am protected by a hero from a world you call primitive. If a human can stand against a fleet, so can you. The cliffhanger. The effect was instant. In the distance, 3 of the massive destroyer ships stopped firing. Their captains were hesitating. They didn't want to be regicides, king-killers. Fire. You fools, fire. Varkas screamed on the open channel. But Varkas' own flagship was now turning its massive megalaser toward the Golden Palace. He didn't care about the broadcast anymore. He was going to kill them himself. Arthur, the main cannon is locking on. Zaria cried. Our shields are at 5%. The copper wires you used, they're melting. We can't move. Arthur looked at the glowing red eye of the enemy flagship. He looked at Lily, who was holding her metal bird, and then at his empty tool bag. One more trick, Arthur whispered. He grabbed a small, blinking, emergency core from the wall. Zaria, get ready to jump to light speed. I'm going to give this ship a heart attack. If we jump now, the engine will explode. Zaria warned. Trust the mechanic, Arthur said, his hand over the final button. As the enemy's megalaser fired a beam of pure destruction, the Golden Palace ship vanished into a blur of blue light, but a massive explosion followed where they had just been. The jump through light speed felt like being inside a washing machine full of stars. The Golden Palace ship groaned and shivered. The copper wires Arthur had installed were melting, filling the bridge with a thick, metallic smell. "We're losing power," Zaria shouted, her hands flying over the flickering controls. "The bypass is failing. We're going to drop out of warp right in the middle of the capital planet's defense grid." Arthur didn't panic. He was buried deep under the control panel, his hands covered in fresh burns. "Just 10 more seconds. I'm diverting the last of the battery power to the landing thrusters. If we're going to crash, we're going to crash in style." The arrival at the throne. With a sound like a thunderclap, the ship dropped out of light speed. Below them was Ethelgard, the capital of the Andromeda Empire. It was a world of floating cities, white marble, and trillions of lights. But Arthur's ship looked like a nightmare. It was smoking, covered in junk patches, and trailing a cloud of scrap metal. Hundreds of Royal Guard ships immediately surrounded them, their weapons locked on. "Identify yourself, or be destroyed," a voice boomed over the speakers. Zaria stood up. She was weak, but she pulled her royal cape over her shoulders. "This is Princess Zaria. I am returning to the throne. Lower your weapons and prepare the High Council." The guards froze. They hadn't seen the princess in weeks. They thought she was dead. As the ship descended toward the royal palace, the entire planet watched in silence. The trial of the primitive. The ship landed with a heavy thud right in the center of the Grand Plaza. The doors creaked open. Zaria stepped out first, tall and glowing with power. Behind her walked Arthur, holding Lily's hand. Arthur looked out of place. He was covered in grease, wearing a torn shirt and carrying a heavy wrench. The High Council, 12 ancient aliens with long robes, stood waiting. "Princess," the head counselor cried. "You have returned. But who is this creature? This human? Our sensors say he has touched the Royal Starcore. That is a crime punishable by death." The crowd gasped. Guards moved forward, their spears glowing. "Stop." Zaria's voice echoed like a physical wave. She pointed at Arthur. "This man is not a criminal. He is the reason the Empire still has a princess. He fixed what your master engineers said was impossible. He fought the Void Hunters with junk. He saved my life not for money, but because it was the right thing to do. The final reward." The council looked at Arthur. They saw a man who wasn't afraid of their power. Arthur just looked bored. He wanted to go home and give Lily a bath. The head counselor stepped forward. "Human Arthur. You have saved the crown jewel of Andromeda. You are entitled to any reward. Do you want a planet of your own? An army? 1,000 years of life?" Arthur looked at Lily, then back at the counselor. He wiped a smudge of oil off his forehead. "I just want a new battery for my truck," Arthur said. "And maybe some better school supplies for my daughter. I've got a shop to run back on Krios. I don't need a planet." The plaza went silent. No one had ever refused a royal reward. Zaria walked up to Arthur. She knelt down, a princess kneeling to a mechanic, and placed a small, golden chip in his hand. "This is not a reward, Arthur," she whispered. "This is a thank you from a friend. This chip will give you access to the Royal Library of Tech. And, check your bank account when you get home." The goodbye. A royal shuttle was prepared to take Arthur and Lily back to their dusty desert planet. As Arthur stepped onto the ramp, Zaria stopped him one last time. "Why did you do it, Arthur? You knew I was dangerous. You knew the whole galaxy was looking for me. Why didn't you just let me die?" Arthur looked at the metal bird Lily was holding. "Because, Princess, in the dark parts of the universe, we humans believe that if you can fix something, you do it. Whether it's a toy bird or a princess's heart. It's just what we do. The infinite balance." Back on the planet Krios, life went back to normal, sort of. Arthur was back in his workshop, fixing a tractor for a neighbor. His hands were still greasy, and his truck still rattled. But things were different. Lily's school supplies had arrived. They were delivered by a massive royal frigate. She now had a holographic teacher and books that could talk. Arthur sat down and pulled out his old, cracked tablet to pay his electricity bill. He clicked on his bank app. Previous balance, $12.40. Current balance, infinite. Underneath the numbers was a small note from the princess, for the man who fixed the stars. Don't worry about the bill for the truck battery. It's on me. Arthur smiled, tucked the tablet into his pocket, and picked up his wrench. He had a neighbor's heater to fix, and in his world, that was the most important job in the galaxy. The end.